betrayal, money, and hidden secrets. Jack lost everything, but can he reclaim his life? Just like Jack learned, we can't change the past, but we can choose how to face it. This is a story not only about revenge, but also about forgiveness and finding inner peace. If you believe in the power of truth and resilience, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to not miss out on the inspiring life lessons from this story. Jack Cooper had the kind of life most people dream of: a successful career, a loving family, and everything in place. He was a financial expert at a prestigious investment firm, and although his job was demanding, it came with the stability and success he had always worked for. His wife, Sophia Grant, was everything he had ever wanted in a partner: intelligent, kind, and always there for him. Together, they had built a beautiful life. They had been married for 8 years, and everything seemed perfect. Sophia was the ideal partner: thoughtful, caring, and incredibly supportive. They lived in a beautiful house in a quiet neighborhood, away from the noise of the city. It was their sanctuary, a place where they could escape from the pressures of the world and simply enjoy each other's company. Jack thought his life was on track, with no signs of trouble in sight. But one day, as Jack was preparing for an important meeting at the office, he received an email from Sophia. At first, he thought it was just a routine message, but when he opened it, everything he thought he knew came crashing down. "We can't go on. I don't love you anymore." The words hit Jack like a ton of bricks. A single, cold sentence. No explanation, no context, just an abrupt end. He read it again, hoping it was some kind of mistake, but it was clear. There was nothing more. His heart raced as confusion and disbelief set in. His perfect life, his perfect marriage, suddenly seemed like it had been a lie. He had no warning, no inkling that things were going wrong. They had been happy, or so he thought, and now, this. Jack felt as if the ground beneath him had disappeared. He couldn't understand what had happened, but one thing was certain. If he didn't act quickly, he could lose everything. He had to know why. He had to act fast, or else he might never be able to get back what he had lost. After the shock of receiving Sophia's email, Jack's mind was in turmoil. The abrupt end to his marriage, with no warning or explanation, left him questioning everything he thought he knew about his wife. At first, he tried to push the doubts aside, thinking it was just a moment of confusion. But as the days passed, something didn't sit right. Sophia had always been the steady one, the calm in their relationship, but recently she had changed. Her behavior had become distant, and Jack had noticed subtle shifts in her actions over the past few months. She had been cold, distant even when they were together, and she'd stopped showing the affection they once shared. It was as if a wall had gone up between them, one that Jack had failed to see until now. The first real sign that something was off came when Jack overheard one of Sophia's phone calls. She was speaking in hushed tones, her voice quick and anxious, but she seemed to be hiding something. When Jack walked into the room, she quickly ended the conversation, and the expression on her face, a mix of guilt and avoidance, was enough to make Jack's suspicion grow. Then there were the unexplained withdrawals from their joint account. Large sums of money had been disappearing without any logical explanation. Jack had always kept track of their finances, but Sophia had started withdrawing money in odd amounts, and when he asked her about it, she gave vague answers. She claimed it was for personal expenses, but Jack knew that didn't make sense. Why the secrecy? It wasn't just the financial irregularities. Sophia had also started receiving calls from an unknown number, always at odd hours of the night. Jack had noticed this when he was home, sitting in the living room while she would step out to answer them, her back to him, speaking in a hurried whisper. She'd always seemed agitated afterward, as if whatever conversation she was having was something she didn't want Jack to hear. These signs were too glaring to ignore. Jack's mind raced. His gut was telling him something was wrong, and he couldn't just let it slide. He needed answers. Realizing he couldn't solve this alone, Jack turned to someone he trusted, his best friend, Lucas Harris. Lucas had been by his side for years, through thick and thin. He had always been the one person Jack knew he could rely on. If there was anyone who could help him uncover the truth, it was Lucas. Jack dialed Lucas's number, his hands shaking slightly as he held the phone to his ear. When Lucas picked up, Jack didn't waste any time. "Lucas, I need your help," Jack said, his voice low, filled with urgency. "Something's wrong with Sophia. I don't know what's going on, but I think she's hiding something from me. I need to know what she's involved in." There was a pause on the other end of the line before Lucas replied. "What happened? What do you mean she's hiding something?" Jack took a deep breath and explained the changes he had noticed: the coldness, the secretive phone calls, the money disappearing from their account. He didn't hold anything back. He needed Lucas to understand the gravity of the situation. "I think she's involved in something dangerous," Jack continued. "I don't know what it is, but I can't just ignore it anymore." Lucas was silent for a moment, then said, "All right, I'll help you. I'll look into it. But Jack, be careful. If she's hiding something, you need to be ready for what you might find." Jack agreed, feeling both relieved and uneasy. He was one step closer to uncovering the truth, but he also knew that the path ahead was going to be dangerous. What had Sophia gotten herself into, and what was she hiding from him? He had to know. The days following Jack's decision to investigate Sophia felt like an endless spiral of suspicion and confusion. With Lucas's help, Jack began digging deeper into Sophia's activities, hoping to uncover the truth. The more he searched, the more unsettling the discoveries became. It started small, with just a few financial transactions that didn't add up. Jack had always prided himself on managing their finances, and he noticed discrepancies in their accounts that couldn't be explained away. Sophia had made several large withdrawals over the past few months, often at odd hours. At first, Jack had assumed it was just an overspending habit, perhaps a shopping spree, or a personal expense she didn't want to share. But when the amount started adding up to thousands of dollars, Jack realized something more sinister was at play. He traced the funds and uncovered something even more shocking. The money was being sent to a series of offshore accounts. At first, Jack thought it was a mistake, but as he dug deeper, the truth became clear. The transactions led back to a company that wasn't registered anywhere and whose name didn't appear on any legitimate business platform. It was a shell company, something meant to hide the true nature of the transactions. The pattern was undeniable. Sophia had been laundering money through these untraceable accounts, and it wasn't just small amounts. She had invested a large sum of their savings into a supposed luxury real estate project and investment that, as Jack quickly discovered, didn't exist. The project, which Sophia had spoken so highly of in passing conversations, was actually a massive scam. Jack's heart sank as the realization hit him. Not only was Sophia involved in something much bigger than he had imagined, but she had also been completely unaware of the depth of the fraud. The investment wasn't just a bad decision, it was the product of a calculated scam designed to take people's money and disappear with it. As Jack continued to connect the dots, he found that the scheme was much more intricate than he could have imagined. The project she had invested in was merely a front for a much larger financial fraud operation. The money had been funneled through several stages of shell companies and hidden assets, designed to make it nearly impossible to trace. Sophia's involvement in this web of deceit wasn't just accidentally, it was intentional. Whether she had been lured into it or had been part of the plan from the start, Jack couldn't be sure. But as he continued to follow the trail, he started to see more than just the financial manipulation. The scope of the operation was vast, and the players behind it were highly organized. In his search for answers, Jack came across an old name he hadn't expected: Edward Blackwell, the same name Catherine had mentioned in passing. Blackwell was a known figure in the world of financial fraud, and now Jack understood why Sophia had been drawn into this world. She had become entangled with Blackwell and his criminal network, unknowingly playing a part in an operation that was much bigger than she had realized. The more Jack uncovered, the more dangerous it seemed. This wasn't just about a cheating wife or a failed marriage. It was about a much larger conspiracy, one that threatened to unravel everything he had worked for. As the pieces came together, Jack knew he had to act fast. Sophia might have been a pawn in this game, but if she didn't come clean soon, both of their lives would be destroyed. His next move was clear. He needed to confront Sophia, but this time, it wasn't just about their marriage. It was about exposing a network of criminals and making sure that the truth came to light before it was too late. But Jack couldn't shake the nagging feeling that there was still so much more to uncover, and the deeper he dug, the more dangerous it would get. Jack had always known that he could rely on his instincts, but now, after everything that had unfolded, it was clear that he needed more than just a gut feeling to uncover the full scope of the mess Sophia had gotten herself into. The stakes were higher than ever. His life was unraveling, and he was standing at the edge of a dark world filled with deceit, manipulation, and crime. Jack knew he couldn't do this alone. That's when he turned to Catherine Miller, a private investigator he had heard about through a mutual acquaintance. Catherine wasn't just any investigator. She was known for her relentless pursuit of truth and her ability to dig up secrets buried deep beneath layers of lies. If anyone could help him figure out what Sophia had really gotten involved in, it was Catherine. They met in a quiet cafe tucked away from the chaos of the city, a place where the noise of the world couldn't reach them. As soon as Jack walked in, Catherine stood up to greet him. She was in her late 30s, with sharp, intelligent eyes and a nonsense demeanor. Her dark hair was pulled back into a tight bun, and she wore a leather jacket that spoke to her no-frills, business-first attitude. "Jack, I'm glad you reached out," she said, her voice calm but firm. "I've been looking into your situation, and there's a lot more going on than you realize." Jack sat down, feeling a mix of relief and anxiety. He was desperate for answers, but now that he had someone to help him, the weight of what he was about to uncover began to feel heavier. "I need to know everything about Sophia's involvement in this," Jack said. "What's really going on? What kind of mess has she gotten herself into?" Catherine nodded and opened a folder she had brought with her, laying out a series of papers on the table. "The first thing you need to understand is that Sophia isn't just a victim here. She's been involved in something much bigger." Jack leaned forward, his heart racing. "What do you mean? I thought she was just a victim of a scam." Catherine looked him in the eye. "She is a victim, but she's also a participant in something far more dangerous. I've been tracking a man named Edward Blackwell for months. He's a notorious figure in the financial world, known for running large-scale, fraudulent operations. I've seen his name pop up in multiple investigations, but I never thought he would be connected to your wife." Jack felt his stomach drop. He had heard the name Blackwell before, but he had never connected it to Sophia. Now, The pieces were starting to fall into place. Blackwell runs a network of shell companies, laundering money and scamming investors. He's been doing it for years, and he's gotten away with it because he's always one step ahead of the law, Catherine continued. But your wife, she's not just an innocent bystander. She's been helping him. Those investments she made, they weren't just poor decisions, they were part of Blackwell's scheme. Jack sat back in his chair, stunned. He had never imagined that Sophia could be involved in something like this. His mind raced as he tried to piece everything together. The withdrawals from their account, the secretive phone calls, the strange behavior, it all made sense now. But it was worse than he could have ever imagined. How could she do this? Jack muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. How could she be part of something so destructive? Catherine didn't mince words. People get involved in these things for all kinds of reasons. Money, power, fear. Maybe she thought she was helping Blackwell. Maybe she thought it was a quick way to fix things. But she's too deep now, and the longer she stays involved, the more dangerous it becomes. Jack felt a surge of anger and betrayal, but he also felt something else, a sense of urgency. He couldn't sit idly by while Sophia continued down this path, and he couldn't let Blackwell continue to manipulate people. I need to stop this, Jack said, his voice firm. I can't just sit here and let them ruin more lives. We need to expose Blackwell. We need to take him down. Catherine nodded. I've already started gathering evidence on Blackwell's operations. We can't go public with it just yet, though. We need to get everything we can, his financials, his network, everything that ties him to the scam. Only then can we bring him down. Jack felt the weight of the situation settling in. He wasn't just fighting for his marriage anymore. He was fighting to expose a criminal network that had already caused untold damage. We need to act fast, Jack said. I'll help you in any way I can, but we need to make sure we're not caught in the process. Blackwell won't hesitate to destroy anyone in his way. Catherine's eyes hardened with resolve. We'll be careful, but we'll be relentless. We can't let him get away with this. As the plan began to take shape, Jack knew there was no turning back. He had already crossed a line, and now there was no choice but to follow through. The battle ahead would be long and dangerous, but he couldn't allow Blackwell to continue his reign of manipulation and destruction. The first step had been taken, and Jack was determined to see it through no matter the cost. Jack had spent days preparing for this moment, but no amount of preparation could prepare him for the emotional weight of facing Sophia. Every inch of him screamed to back down, to leave things alone, but he knew deep down that he couldn't. He needed answers, and he needed them now. He arranged to meet her at their favorite cafe, a quiet place they used to go to after long days of work, where they'd talk about their dreams and share small, intimate moments. But today, the atmosphere felt different, heavy, charged with the tension of everything that had gone unsaid between them. As Jack walked in, he saw her sitting at a corner table. Sophia was dressed in a simple black dress, her hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, looking every bit the woman he had once adored. But now, it wasn't just her appearance that haunted Hemet, was the coldness in her eyes. The distance she had put between them. She didn't notice him at first, her gaze fixed on her phone, as if she were avoiding reality. Taking a deep breath, Jack walked over and sat down across from her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence hung heavily between them, but Jack could feel his pulse quicken. He wasn't sure where to start, but he knew he had to say something. Sophia, he began, his voice steady but edged with frustration. We need to talk. I know what you've been hiding. The money, the investments, everything. It's all connected to Blackwell. You've been involved in something much bigger than just a bad investment. You're part of a scheme, a scam. Sophia's eyes flickered for just a second, but she quickly masked it, her expression returning to that cool, collected facade. She placed her phone down slowly and folded her hands in front of her. Her gaze shifted away from Jack, and for a moment he could see her hesitation. But then she looked up at him and the mask slipped. "You have no idea what you're talking about," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "You don't know the full picture. You don't know why I did it." Jack felt a knot form in his chest. The pain of hearing her deny everything, of her refusing to acknowledge the depth of what she had done, was suffocating. "Then tell me, Sophia, tell me why. Why did you get involved with him? Why did you lie to me?" Sophia's face hardened, and she leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. "I didn't lie to you, Jack. I just didn't tell you everything. You were so wrapped up in your work, so focused on your perfect little life, that you never saw what was happening around us. I wasn't enough for you. You were never home. You never saw me." Her words stung more than Jack cared to admit. He had always tried to balance his demanding job with his love for Sophia, but he now realized how disconnected they had become. He hadn't seen the signs, hadn't noticed the cracks in their relationship. But this wasn't about him, this was about her betrayal, and what she had gotten herself involved in. "I've been in this for a long time, Jack. I didn't know how to get out. Blackwell promised me he could fix everything, make us both rich. It was supposed to be a way out of the mess we were in." Jack stared at her, disbelief flooding his chest. "You thought that getting involved in a criminal operation was going to fix things. You risked everything, our life, for money." Sophia's eyes flashed with something darker. "You think I wanted this? You think I enjoyed living like this? But you wouldn't listen to me. I needed to do something, and Blackwell gave me a way out. I didn't have any other choice." The words hit Jack like a slap to the face. She wasn't taking responsibility. She was still trying to justify her actions, still shifting the blame onto him. Jack could feel his temper rising, but he held it back, trying to stay composed. "You always had a choice, Sophia. You chose this, and now you've dragged me into it." His voice was low, controlled, but the hurt was evident in his eyes. "You've betrayed me, and you've betrayed everything we had." Sophia looked away, her voice becoming cold. "You don't get it, Jack. If you continue with this investigation, everything is going to get worse. You'll regret it. If you think you're going to fix this, you're wrong." Jack's heart raced, but he could feel a growing determination pushing through the anger. She was threatening him, trying to intimidate him into backing down. But Jack had already made up his mind. No matter what, he was going to see this through. "I'm not backing down," Jack said, his voice unwavering. "I'm going to expose Blackwell and everything he's done. I'm going to make sure you and everyone else he's hurt gets justice. I won't let this go, no matter what you say." Sophia's face twisted in a mixture of fear and defiance. She stood up abruptly, knocking her chair back, and without another word, she walked out of the cafe. Jack watched her leave, a sense of finality settling over him. There was no going back now. The battle had only just begun, and Jack knew that whatever happened next, he was prepared to face it. But as he sat there, alone, he couldn't shake the feeling that something darker was pulling the strings, something bigger than just Sophia's involvement in this scam. Jack had unwittingly stepped into a world that he wasn't prepared for, and he was determined to find out just how far it went. With each passing day, Jack and Catherine moved closer to the truth. The more they uncovered, the more they realized how deep Blackwell's web of deceit spread. Blackwell wasn't just a businessman running a scam. He was a mastermind, using complex financial tactics to launder money and cover up his tracks. His operations stretched across borders, involving multiple shell companies that appeared legitimate on the surface, but were simply fronts for his illegal activities. Catherine, with her extensive investigative background, had managed to get access to some of Blackwell's confidential files. She had infiltrated several of his financial networks, slowly piecing together the plan that had been hidden for so long. The most shocking discovery was that Blackwell had been using the money he had stolen to invest in seemingly legitimate businesses, giving them a clean, trustworthy appearance to the public. These businesses, ranging from luxury real estate projects to tech startups, were merely a facade to launder money. The real purpose of these investments was to clean the money he had stolen and redirect it into his own pockets. "It's brilliant," Catherine said, flipping through the files. "He's using legal channels to legitimize illegal funds. The scale of this is much bigger than we thought, Jack. We're dealing with an international operation." Jack felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He had always suspected that Blackwell was more than just a local conman. But now, the full extent of his operations was starting to make sense. Every time Jack thought he was one step closer to cracking the case, Blackwell seemed to be 2 steps ahead. And now, Jack realized that Blackwell had been watching them, aware that someone was after him. They had underestimated how sophisticated Blackwell's surveillance network was. A few days after Jack and Catherine began their investigation into his finances, strange things started happening. Jack's phone started acting up, receiving odd texts that were clearly coded. His email accounts were hacked, and Catherine's secure lines were compromised. It became clear that Blackwell had figured out that someone was getting too close to the truth. Catherine had a contact in the tech world who would help them set up encrypted systems to keep their communications safe. But now, it seemed like Blackwell was already ahead of them, managing to infiltrate their digital infrastructure. "We're being watched," Catherine said, her voice tense. "We need to be careful. Blackwell isn't just a businessman. He's a manipulator. He's setting traps for us, trying to catch us off guard." Jack's mind raced. He couldn't back down now, not when they were so close. But every move they made seemed to bring more danger. It was as if Blackwell was playing a game of chess, and they were only pawns. "We need to make our next move carefully," Jack said, his tone grim. "We've got the evidence. We can't let him know we're onto him." Catherine agreed. They needed to be cautious, to plan each step with precision. But as they sifted through more of Blackwell's files, they realized that Blackwell had a network of people in high places, and his reach was far greater than they had imagined. The people Blackwell had corrupted were not just low-level players. They included politicians, bankers, and even law enforcement officials who had helped him cover his tracks. Jack and Catherine had to outsmart him at every turn. But the more they investigated, the more they realized that Blackwell wasn't just after money, he was after power, and he would do anything to keep it. "We're in deeper than I thought," Jack said, frustration creeping into his voice. "If Blackwell can manipulate entire systems like this, what else is he capable of?" Catherine's expression was steely. "We need to strike before he does. If we wait too long, he'll bury us." The investigation had become a race against time. Jack and Catherine knew they couldn't waste any more time. They had to act quickly, but with every move they made, the danger grew. Blackwell was a master at covering his tracks, and Jack was beginning to understand just how far he would go to keep his empire intact. "Let's make him feel the pressure," Jack said, determination flooding his veins. "He's been too comfortable for too long. Now it's our turn." Catherine nodded. "But we need to be careful. One wrong move, and we'll be caught in his trap. With that, the stakes had never been higher. Jack and Catherine were in a race to expose Blackwell's true intentions. But they were also stepping into a deadly game, where one wrong move could cost them everything. The stakes were clear now. It was no longer just about taking down Blackwell's financial empire. It was about surviving the traps he had set and exposing the man for who he truly was before it was too late. Everything had been falling into place. Jack and Catherine had gathered the evidence, and they were preparing to expose Blackwell and dismantle his criminal empire. The documents were ready, the plan was set. They had already made strides, and it felt like they were finally on the brink of victory. But, as always in this dangerous game, fate had a way of throwing an unexpected twist. It started with a phone call late one night. Jack had been at his apartment, reviewing the final pieces of evidence, when his phone buzzed. It was an encrypted message from Catherine. "We've been compromised. Blackwell knows. I think we've been betrayed." Jack's heart sank as he read the message. What did Catherine mean by compromised? His mind immediately raced through every possible scenario. Had they been caught? Were Blackwell's men on their tail? But as he tried to reach Catherine, his phone suddenly died, the screen flickering out of existence. He tried to restart it, but it was useless. Something was wrong. Then, just as he was about to call Catherine's backup line, an alarming realization hit him. The door to his apartment creaked open slowly, and in stepped a familiar figure. Lucas. The sight of his old friend, standing there with a cold, unreadable expression, sent a shiver down Jack's spine. Lucas, the man who had been by his side through everything, the man he trusted more than anyone, was now standing before him like a stranger. "What the hell, Lucas?" Jack's voice was sharp, laced with confusion and rising anger. "What's going on? Why haven't you responded to my calls?" Lucas stepped forward, his face tight, almost regretful, but his eyes were empty. "Jack, I'm sorry," he said quietly, almost too calmly. "But I never wanted this to happen." Jack froze, his instincts kicking in. Something was wrong, something was off. "What are you talking about? I thought you were helping me expose Blackwell." Lucas sighed, looking pained, but there was a coldness in his eyes that Jack hadn't seen before. "I was, Jack. At first, but Blackwell, he offered me a deal I couldn't refuse. You don't understand what you're up against. You think you can just take him down, but he's too powerful. I had no choice." The words hit Jack like a physical blow. His own best friend, the person he trusted with everything, had betrayed him. Lucas had sold him out to Blackwell. "No choice," Jack repeated, his voice breaking. "You sold me out, Lucas. You gave him everything I've worked for. Every piece of evidence we had is gone, isn't it?" Lucas didn't answer right away. He didn't need to. Jack could see the truth in his eyes. The reality of the situation hit Jack like a truck. All the hard work, all the planning, every piece of evidence they had gathered, it was all gone. Blackwell had been one step ahead all along. And now it was Lucas, his oldest friend, who had betrayed him to keep his place in Blackwell's empire. "I had to, Jack," Lucas said, his voice low. "I'm sorry, but you don't know what it's like to be on the other side. You think I wanted to do this? I didn't, but I couldn't afford to lose everything either." Jack clenched his fists, fighting the surge of anger threatening to explode. Betrayal, this was the price he had paid. The realization that his friend, someone who had shared his life, his secrets, his ambitions, had now turned on him was overwhelming. "But why, Lucas?" Jack asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Why would you do this to me? After everything, I didn't want to, but I had no choice. Lucas shook his head slowly, his eyes filled with regret. I sold the information to Blackwell. I thought it would be a way out. You don't know how deep he's in this game. He has people everywhere, people who could destroy us. I thought I could protect us. I thought I was helping. But I see now I was wrong. Jack could feel the weight of the betrayal sinking in, but there was no time for anger. He had to think. He had to act fast. The evidence they had collected was gone. Blackwell knew they were onto him. "Get out," Jack said, his voice barely audible. "Get out of my life, Lucas. You've ruined everything." Lucas hesitated, his face full of sorrow, but there was no turning back now. Jack turned his back, knowing that this was the final time he would ever speak to his old friend. As the door clicked shut behind Lucas, Jack felt an icy wave of determination wash over him. He had been betrayed, but the fight was far from over. Blackwell had won this round, but Jack would not let him win the war. He would find a way to take back what was his, to expose Blackwell for the criminal he was. And this time, Jack would play the game by his own rules. With his best friend gone, Jack knew one thing for sure. He couldn't trust anyone anymore. But that didn't matter. He was going to finish this. He was going to take Blackwell down, no matter the cost. The pain of betrayal still burned in Jack's chest, but it was quickly replaced by a cold, steely determination. He had been wronged, not just by Blackwell, but by Lucas, his closest friend. He couldn't afford to let the betrayal break him. Now, more than ever, Jack knew that the only way to move forward was to bring Blackwell down, to expose him for the criminal he was, and to ensure that no one else fell victim to his manipulation. With Catherine's help, Jack devised a plan to take down Blackwell once and for all. The evidence they had gathered on Blackwell's illegal activities was substantial enough to destroy his empire. The key was to leverage the very information that Blackwell had worked so hard to hide, using it to expose him in a way that would be undeniable. But this time, Jack wasn't just going to play defense. This time, he was going on the offense. It was his turn to be the one in control. They knew that Blackwell's network was vast, and that he had people in high places, corrupt bankers, politicians, and even law enforcement officers who helped cover his tracks. But Catherine had a plan to outmaneuver Blackwell's empire. They would take the evidence and leak it to the media directly to the public, where it couldn't be suppressed. But they couldn't just throw the files out into the world. They needed a proper platform, something that would ensure the truth got out to the masses and put Blackwell on the radar of the authorities. Catherine had contacts in the media who could help, and with the right timing, they could expose Blackwell's operations to the world. The plan was bold, risky, and dangerous, but it was their only shot. But as they began to execute the plan, things quickly went off track. Jack had been so focused on the final goal that he had underestimated just how dangerous Blackwell was. The moment Jack and Catherine started moving the evidence into position, they realized that Blackwell had been more prepared than they ever could have anticipated. Blackwell had known they were coming for him. Even as they worked on preparing the media leak, Blackwell was preparing to fight back harder than ever before. They were not just facing a criminal mastermind. They were facing someone with no moral compass, someone who would stop at nothing to protect his empire. Jack and Catherine realized too late that Blackwell had already started his own countermove. They received an anonymous tip that Blackwell had dispatched a team to silence anyone who dared to stand against him. It wasn't just about the money anymore. Blackwell was angry, and he was prepared to do whatever it took to eliminate his threats. "We've been too exposed," Catherine said, her voice tense as she stared at the encrypted message. "Blackwell's already onto us. He's sending people to take us down. Jack clenched his fists. The thought of going down without a fight was unimaginable. They had come so far, and they couldn't back out now. He wouldn't let Blackwell win. "We'll need to act fast," Jack said, his voice low and controlled. "We've got one shot at this. If we don't expose him now, we'll be buried with him." The clock was ticking, and with every moment, Blackwell's grip on the situation tightened. Jack could feel the weight of their decision. If they didn't act immediately, they would lose everything. But as they prepared to make their final move, they knew that they were no longer just fighting Blackwell. They were fighting a war against a man who had already prepared for their every move. Jack's heart pounded as the reality of the situation set in. This wasn't just about bringing down a criminal. It was about survival. And if they didn't play their cards perfectly, if they didn't outsmart Blackwell at every turn, they would become his next victims. "We can't let him win," Jack said, determination hardening his voice. "We need to take him down once and for all." Catherine nodded, her expression steely. "We'll do it, Jack. We're too close to back down now." The final confrontation was looming, but Jack knew that even though they had a plan, the game had just changed. Blackwell was coming for them, and they had no choice but to stay one step ahead. Their revenge would be bittersweet, but it was the only path forward. The tension had reached a breaking point. Jack could feel it in his bones. This was it. The final showdown. Everything they had worked for, every sacrifice, every piece of evidence, was leading to this one moment. It was now or never. Catherine had managed to leak the incriminating evidence to the media, and the storm was brewing. Blackwell's empire was beginning to crumble, but he wasn't going down without a fight. The man was ruthless, and as Jack and Catherine prepared to make their final move, they knew Blackwell would stop at nothing to silence them. The news was everywhere, stories about Blackwell's fraudulent schemes, his ties to criminal networks, and the devastation he had caused to countless innocent lives. The truth was finally coming to light, but Jack couldn't shake the feeling that Blackwell was planning something desperate. He wasn't wrong. A few days after the story broke, Jack received a chilling message. It was from an anonymous source, but it didn't take long to realize that it was Blackwell's doing. The message was clear. "You've exposed too much. I will make you pay for this. You think you've won. You haven't seen anything yet." Jack's heart pounded. Blackwell wasn't just going to let this slide, he was coming for them. Jack knew that their fight wasn't over yet. He wasn't just trying to bring Blackwell down, he was trying to survive. The final confrontation took place in the very building where Blackwell had orchestrated his empire of lies. The city skyline shimmered outside the windows, a stark contrast to the darkness of the room where Jack and Catherine were waiting. They were not alone. A few of Jack's old friends, people who had been wronged by Blackwell's schemes, had joined them. It was time for the final push. Catherine looked at Jack, her eyes filled with determination. "This is it. We have to stay one step ahead. Blackwell won't go down easily." Jack nodded, but his mind kept returning to Sophia. He had finally understood the depth of her involvement in Blackwell's web, but the truth still hurt. She had been manipulated, yes, but she had also made choices that had torn their world apart. Jack couldn't help but feel a sense of loss. The woman he had once loved was now a shadow of the person he had known. Just then, the door to the room opened, and there he was, Edward Blackwell. He didn't look like a man on the brink of losing everything. No, Blackwell was calm, collected, almost smug. His suit was immaculate, his demeanor untouched by the chaos that was consuming him. Well, Blackwell said, his voice smooth, like he was greeting old friends. "I see the rats are coming out of the woodwork. You think you've won. You think the truth will save you. It's too late for that." Jack felt the rage rising within him, but he held it back. This wasn't about anger. This was about justice. "You're finished, Blackwell," Jack said, his voice firm. "The truth is out. People know what you've done. It's over." Blackwell smiled, a chilling smile that sent a shiver down Jack's spine. "You think exposing me will stop this? You're naive, Jack. This isn't about the truth. This is about power. And I still have plenty of that." As he spoke, Blackwell made a subtle move, and the room erupted into chaos. A group of armed men burst in, surrounding them. Catherine reacted quickly, drawing her weapon and taking cover, signaling for the others to do the same. Jack's pulse raced, but his focus remained sharp. This wasn't just about exposing Blackwell anymore. It was about survival. The gunfire rang out, and the battle for their lives began. Jack moved quickly, using the chaos to his advantage, ducking behind furniture and staying low. He kept his eye on Blackwell, knowing that the final blow had to come from him. There was no room for hesitation. As the dust settled, it became clear that Blackwell was losing ground. His men were scattered, and it was only a matter of time before he was cornered. Jack's breath came in ragged gasps, but he didn't stop moving. He had come too far to turn back now. Finally, in a last-ditch effort to escape, Blackwell tried to flee, but Jack was faster. In a swift move, he caught Blackwell in the hallway, just as he reached the exit. "It's over, Blackwell," Jack said, his voice steady, even though his heart was pounding. "You're done." Blackwell's eyes widened in disbelief, and for the first time, he looked vulnerable. But then, with a sneer, he attempted to fight back, but Jack was ready. With one final, decisive action, he took Blackwell down, securing him for the authorities. As the police arrived to take Blackwell into custody, Jack stood there, his body exhausted but his mind clear. The battle was over. But as he looked around the room at the destruction, at the lives Blackwell had ruined, he knew the cost had been high. Jack had won, but the price of victory had been steep. In the end, it wasn't just about bringing down Blackwell, it was about rebuilding what had been lost, starting over from the ashes of the life he once knew. The fight was over, but the healing had only just begun. Jack stood alone in his apartment, staring out the window at the city below. The once bustling metropolis now felt strangely quiet, as though it, too, had taken a collective breath after the chaos that had unfolded. Blackwell had been taken down, his empire of lies exposed for the world to see. The evidence they had gathered was irrefutable, and his arrest marked the end of a long and dangerous journey. But as the weight of their victory settled in, Jack couldn't shake the emptiness that lingered in his chest. He had done it. He had avenged the countless victims Blackwell had swindled and manipulated. He had exposed the truth, but at what cost? His marriage was over. His trust in the people he had once called friends had been shattered, and the person he had been before all of this felt like a distant memory. Jack had fought for justice, but the road had been riddled with pain, betrayal, and loss. Sophia's face still haunted him. She wasn't entirely innocent, but she had been caught in Blackwell's web, just like so many others. He had confronted her, demanded answers, but in the end, she had made her own choices. Even now, Jack couldn't decide whether to hate her or feel sorry for her. She had made decisions that tore their lives apart, but in the quiet moments, Jack couldn't ignore the remnants of the love they had shared. But now, the chapter with Sophia was over. It had to be. She had moved on, and Jack had no choice but to do the same. Turning away from the window, Jack looked around his apartment. It was no longer the home he had shared with Sophia. It was just a space, an empty shell, filled with the echoes of a life that no longer existed. He had tried to hang on to the past, tried to fix things, tried to fix her, but in doing so, he had lost himself. He could have stayed in that empty apartment, haunted by what had happened, clinging to the idea of justice. But Jack knew that true justice wasn't just about exposing the wrongdoers. It was about healing, about finding peace within himself. He couldn't change the past, no matter how hard he tried. What he could do was start anew. Jack had already begun the process of untangling himself from the mess that Blackwell had left behind. The financial troubles, the ruined investments, those were all things he could rebuild. The truth about Blackwell had been exposed, and Jack was free from the grasp of the man who had tormented his life. But what about the emotional toll? What about the scars that would take longer to heal? He knew that the road to redemption wasn't a quick fix. It wasn't just about catching the bad guys. It was about rebuilding his own life, finding purpose again, and learning how to forgive, forgiving others, and more importantly, forgiving himself. In the weeks that followed, Jack made the decision to leave the city behind. He couldn't stay in the place where so many painful memories were tied. He sold the apartment, packed his things, and moved to a quieter, simpler town. A place where he could start fresh. There were no more reminders of Blackwell, no more ghosts from his past haunting him. Jack found a small house near the countryside, far from the hustle and bustle of the city. It was a peaceful place, a fresh start. He found solace in the simplicity of his new life, spending time outdoors, reading, and focusing on his own growth. He began working on a new career, one that allowed him to give back and help others, a way to rebuild his sense of purpose. Over time, Jack found a way to forgive himself. He stopped blaming himself for the things he couldn't control, for the people who had betrayed him, for the life that had slipped through his fingers. He began to heal piece by piece, and in that healing, he found peace. As the sun set on another quiet evening, Jack stood in his backyard, looking out at the horizon. For the first time in a long while, he felt a sense of calm wash over him. He had fought for justice, but the greatest victory was the one he had achieved within himself. He had let go of the past and was finally moving forward, no longer shackled by anger or regret. Jack smiled to himself. It was time to embrace the future. The battle was over. The road to redemption had just begun, and for the first time, Jack felt free.